Have you ever watched someone destroy everything they built with a single careless decision? That moment when years of effort crumble like a sandcastle before the tide? Not from bad luck, not from powerful enemies, but from a mistake so obvious it makes you wince to witness it? Niccolo Machiavelli spent his life studying such moments. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, where a wrong word could end in exile or death, he watched brilliant minds fall to foolish errors. What he discovered wasn't just a manual for princes, it was a map of human nature's most dangerous blind spots. Today, these same mistakes destroy careers, relationships, and dreams with the same ruthless efficiency they did 500 years ago. The palace intrigue may be gone, but the psychology remains unchanged. We are still the same creatures, prone to the same fatal errors, blind to the same obvious truths. But here's what Machiavelli understood that most miss. These mistakes aren't random. They follow patterns as predictable as the seasons. And once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. They become like rocks beneath the water's surface, visible to those who know where to look, invisible to those who don't. The first mistake, trusting your enemies to remain weak. Picture this. A father builds a successful business from nothing. His competitor, once formidable, falls on hard times. The father, feeling generous, or perhaps superior, throws his rival some small contracts. He's finished, the father tells his son. No threat anymore. 20 years later, that finished competitor owns half the market. The father's business struggles to survive. His son asks how this happened. The father can only shake his head. I fed the wolf cub, he says, thinking it would never grow teeth. Machiavelli watched this drama play out in kingdoms and republics alike. The duke who spared a defeated rival out of mercy, the merchant who helped a struggling competitor out of pity, the politician who dismissed a young opponent as insignificant. Each believed they were being wise, even noble. Each learned too late that weakness is often temporary, but the memory of humiliation is forever. Here's the profound truth. We see others as fixed photographs when they are actually flowing rivers. The person who seems harmless today carries within them all the potential for tomorrow's power. Every slight they endure, every moment they spend in your shadow, adds fuel to a fire you cannot see. This isn't about paranoia or cruelty. It's about understanding that human nature contains an inexhaustible drive to rise, to prove, to overcome. The employee you thoughtlessly criticize in a meeting doesn't forget. The colleague you exclude from important decisions remembers. The competitor you publicly mock stores that moment like a treasure. Years pass, fortunes shift, and suddenly the harmless one holds power over your fate. They remember your condescension with crystal clarity. You've forgotten the incident entirely. This asymmetry of memory, where slights linger in the receiver's mind while fading from the giver's, creates more downfalls than all the conspiracies in history. The practical wisdom isn't to crush everyone who might someday threaten you. That's impossible and exhausting. Instead, treat temporary weakness with the same respect you'd show permanent strength. Never humiliate the fallen. Never mock the struggling. Never assume today's power dynamic will last forever. Remember, every acorn contains an oak tree. Every spark can become a wildfire. Every person you dismiss as insignificant carries within them the potential for significance. Machiavelli's insight wasn't cynical. It was deeply respectful of human potential, including the potential for transformation and revenge. The second mistake, choosing weak allies to feel strong. A talented architect, brilliant but insecure, builds her firm by surrounding herself with mediocre associates. She tells herself she's mentoring them, developing talent. But watch her in meetings, how she subtly undermines any associate who shows too much promise, how she hoards the important clients, how she ensures she's always the smartest person in the room. For a while it works. Clients love her. She wins awards. The firm grows. But architecture is a team sport at the highest levels. When she bids for her dream project, a landmark museum, she loses to a rival firm, not because they had a better lead architect, but because they had a better team. The tragedy? She never sees it coming. Surrounded by weakness she cultivated, she mistakes their dependence for loyalty, their limitation for dedication. When the crucial moment arrives, she stands alone, wondering why her kingdom of shadows couldn't cast real shade. Machiavelli observed this pattern in every failing court. The prince who promoted only flatterers, the minister who hired only followers, the general who chose only yes men for his staff. Each believed they were being smart, maintaining control. Each discovered too late that a throne held up by weak pillars crushes its occupant when it falls. Here's what's fascinating about human psychology. We often choose companions not for their strength, but for how strong they make us feel. The friend who never challenges our opinions, the partner who always needs our help, the colleague who makes us look good by comparison. These relationships feel safe, even comfortable. They protect our ego like bubble wrap. But comfort and growth are enemies. Every time you choose the less threatening option, the employee who won't question you, the advisor who won't challenge you, the friend who won't outshine you, you're not building strength. You're accumulating weakness. You're creating an echo chamber where your limitations multiply instead of diminish. The real tragedy is that strong allies would make you stronger, not weaker. When a brilliant person challenges your ideas, you develop better ideas. When a skilled partner handles their share, you're free to excel at yours. When confident friends celebrate your success without envy, you reach higher without fear. But this requires something most find terrifying: the willingness to not always be the smartest person in the room, to sometimes be the student, not the teacher, to risk being outshone in order to shine brighter. This is the paradox that breaks weak leaders. To truly lead, you must sometimes follow. To truly stand tall, you must stand among giants. Machiavelli's insight cuts deeper than mere strategy. He understood that our choice of allies reveals our deepest fears and truest nature. The secure person surrounds themselves with strength. The insecure person surrounds themselves with weakness. And in the end, we become what we surround ourselves with. The third mistake: believing power follows justice. A young prosecutor, brilliant and idealistic, takes on the city's corruption. She has evidence, witnesses, the law on her side. Justice will prevail, she tells her team. The system works if we work the system. 2 years later, she's transferred to traffic court. The corrupt official she targeted? Promoted. Her witnesses? Silenced or discredited. The evidence? Buried in bureaucratic procedures. She sits in her small office, wondering how right could be so wrong. This is perhaps the most painful mistake Machiavelli identifies: the belief that being right is enough, that justice carries its own power, that truth, once revealed, naturally triumphs over lies. It's a beautiful belief. It's also a dangerous delusion. Watch what happens in any organization when someone challenges the established order with mere facts. The whistleblower with documented proof of wrongdoing, the employee who points out the emperor has no clothes, the board member who questions questionable practices. They expect reason to prevail. Instead, they discover that power has its own logic, and that logic rarely aligns with justice. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In the short term, power beats truth almost every time. Not because might makes right, but because power writes the rules, controls the narrative, and decides what counts as truth. The corrupt judge determines what evidence is admissible. The biased media shapes public perception. The entrenched system protects itself with 1,000 small procedures. This isn't cynicism, it's physics. Power is like gravity, invisible but undeniable, bending everything toward itself. Justice, meanwhile, is like light, pure and straight but easily blocked or redirected. To change anything, you need more than truth. You need the power to make truth matter. Machiavelli watched idealists crash against this reality like waves against stone. The righteous rebel defeated by the cunning tyrant. The honest minister outmaneuvered by corrupt colleagues. The truthful messenger silenced by those who preferred comfortable lies. Each believed their cause would protect them. Each learned that causes don't win wars. Power does. The deeper insight is this: justice without power is mere philosophy. Power without justice is mere tyranny. But power guided by justice, that can actually change the world. The key is understanding that righteousness alone is not a strategy. Truth alone is not a weapon. You need both the high ground and the force to hold it. This doesn't mean abandoning principles. It means being strategic about advancing them. The successful reformer doesn't just expose corruption, she builds alliances first. The effective whistleblower doesn't just speak truth, he ensures protection first. The wise idealist doesn't just fight power, she acquires it first. Remember, Machiavelli wasn't advising us to abandon justice, he was warning us not to be naive about it. In a perfect world, truth would triumph simply by being true. In our world, truth needs strategy, allies, and yes, power to prevail. The question isn't whether to pursue justice, it's how to pursue it effectively. The fourth mistake, displaying superiority without security. A brilliant software developer joins a traditional company. Within weeks, he's revolutionizing their systems, showing everyone how outdated their methods are. He doesn't hide his disdain for the dinosaurs who've been there for decades. "I'm bringing them into the 21st century," he tells friends. 6 months later, he's gone. Officially, it's restructuring. Unofficially, the dinosaurs he mocked controlled the budget committees, the project assignments, the performance reviews. His technical brilliance couldn't save him from their institutional power. His final email to a friend says simply, "I won the battles, but lost the war." Machiavelli understood something profound about human nature. People will forgive many things, but they rarely forgive being made to feel small. You can take their money, their position, even their freedom, but take their dignity and you create an enemy for life. This is the mistake of assumed invulnerability. The genius who believes intelligence protects them from politics. The wealthy who believe money shields them from resentment. The beautiful who believe charm excuses their cruelty. Each displays their superiority like a peacock spreading its feathers, forgetting that bright colors also make excellent targets. Here's the psychological truth. Every display of superiority creates its opposite, an inferiority that seeks revenge. When you make others feel stupid, they don't become smarter. They become resentful. When you flaunt your success, others don't feel inspired. They feel diminished. And the diminished have a long memory and endless patience. The executive who constantly reminds subordinates of her Ivy League education. The athlete who can't stop mentioning his championship rings. The artist who dismisses others' work as amateur. Each believes they're establishing authority. Instead, they're accumulating enemies who wait, watch, and remember. The tragedy is that true superiority doesn't need display. Excellence speaks for itself in whispers, not shouts. The master chef doesn't mock others' cooking, his food does the talking. The great athlete doesn't belittle opponents. Her performance provides the proof. The wise leader doesn't demand respect. She earns it through actions, not announcements. But here's the deeper insight. The need to display superiority often masks its opposite, a deep insecurity about one's position. The truly confident don't need constant validation. They don't need others to feel small for them to feel large. They understand that real power is like the sun. It illuminates others rather than casting them in shadow. Machiavelli saw this pattern everywhere. The new prince who alienated established nobles by flaunting his power. The wealthy merchant who humiliated competitors with ostentatious displays. The brilliant minister who couldn't resist showing how much smarter he was than colleagues. Each confused fear for respect, intimidation for influence. The practical wisdom is this: if you must be superior, be quietly superior. Let others discover your excellence rather than announcing it. Share credit generously. Acknowledge others' contributions genuinely. Make people feel larger in your presence, not smaller. This isn't false modesty, it's strategic wisdom. Remember, every ego you bruise becomes a stone in your path. Every dignity you preserve becomes a bridge to your future. The choice isn't between excellence and mediocrity, it's between isolated brilliance and supported success. In the end, the tallest trees are often the first to fall in storms, while the forest stands through its mutual support. The fifth mistake: ignoring indirect threats. A successful restaurant owner focuses all her attention on her direct competitor across the street. She matches their prices, copies their promotions, obsesses over their customer reviews. Meanwhile, a food truck parks 2 blocks away, then another. Soon there's a whole food truck plaza. They're not real competition, she says, just a fad. 2 years later, her restaurant closes. Not because the competitor across the street won, but because the entire dining landscape changed. The food trucks offered variety, convenience, lower prices. Her customers didn't choose her competitor. They chose an entirely different way of eating. She fought the last war while the next one was being waged around her. Machiavelli's genius was recognizing that the most dangerous threats rarely announce themselves. They don't march through the front gate with banners flying. They seep through cracks, accumulate in corners, transform the landscape so gradually you don't notice until it's too late. Think about the greatest disruptions in any field. The taxi companies didn't lose to better taxi companies. They lost to Uber. Newspapers didn't fail because of better newspapers. They failed because of Google and Facebook. Traditional retailers didn't close because of better stores. They closed because of Amazon. The threat came from an angle they weren't watching. This happens in personal life too. Marriages don't usually end because of dramatic affairs. They end because of accumulated neglect, gradual emotional distance, tiny betrayals that compound over time. Careers don't typically implode from single catastrophic failures. They stagnate from missed trends, ignored skill gaps, relationships allowed to wither. Here's the psychological trap. We're wired to notice direct threats: the saber-toothed tiger, the hostile competitor, the obvious enemy. Our ancestors survived by responding to immediate, visible dangers. But modern threats are different. They're systemic, subtle, cumulative. They don't roar. They whisper. The executive obsessed with quarterly earnings while company culture slowly toxifies. The politician focused on the opposition party while social media reshapes political discourse entirely. The parent battling screen time while algorithms quietly reprogram their child's values. Each fights the obvious battle while losing the hidden war. Machiavelli watched this in Renaissance politics constantly. The duke who fortified against his neighboring rival while merchants quietly bought up his economy. The prince who built higher walls while ideas of democracy spread through his population. The minister who guarded against palace coups while printing presses made his censorship obsolete. The deeper insight is about attention itself. We have limited awareness, like a flashlight in a dark room. Whatever we illuminate seems like the whole world. But the room is vast, and threats multiply in the shadows we're not watching. The question isn't just what we're seeing, it's what we're not seeing because of what we're watching. This doesn't mean paranoia about everything. That's exhausting and impossible. Instead, it means developing peripheral vision, regular assessment of the whole landscape, not just the obvious opponents. Asking not just who's competing with me, but what could make my entire game irrelevant. The practical approach is systematic scanning. Like a lighthouse rotating its beam, regularly check different horizons. What technologies could disrupt your industry? What social changes could shift your relationships? What assumptions are you making that might not hold tomorrow? The goal isn't to predict every future. It's to avoid being blindsided by any future. Remember, Machiavelli's warning isn't about the enemies we see. It's about the changes we don't notice, the ground shifting beneath our feet, the rules changing while we're still playing the old game. The most humiliating defeats come not from being outplayed, but from playing the wrong game entirely. The sixth mistake: burning bridges to prove a point. A talented marketing director quits her job in spectacular fashion. She sends a company-wide email detailing every flaw in management, every stupid decision, every example of incompetence she's endured. "I'm burning this bridge," she tells friends, and lighting the way for others. She feels triumphant, vindicated, free. 3 years later, she's applying for her dream position at a new company. During final interviews, everything's going perfectly until the CEO mentions, casually, that he'll need to check with his golf buddy, her former boss. The temperature in the room changes. She knows she won't get the job. Machiavelli understood something profound about power and connection. The world is smaller than our anger admits. Today's enemy might be tomorrow's gatekeeper. The bridge you burn in righteousness might be the only path to where you need to go. Every relationship you destroy shrinks your future universe of possibilities. This isn't about being fake or never standing up for yourself. It's about understanding that satisfaction and strategy rarely align. That moment of explosive truth-telling feels amazing. The dramatic exit, the devastating resignation letter, the public calling out of wrongdoing. It's intoxicating to finally say what you really think. But here's what's fascinating about human psychology. We remember our reasons for burning bridges, but others only remember the flames. You recall the justification, the provocation, the righteousness of your cause. They recall the heat, the destruction, the breach of professional norms. Time validates your feelings to yourself, but rarely to others. Watch what happens in any industry, any community, any extended family. The person who leaves every job badly, the relative who exits every relationship with scorched earth, the colleague who can't disagree without declaring war. They tell themselves they're principled. Others see them as dangerous. The real tragedy is that burning bridges rarely achieves its purpose. That scathing exit interview doesn't reform the company. It just burns your reference. That dramatic family confrontation doesn't change dysfunctional patterns. It just excludes you from future gatherings. That public resignation doesn't topple corrupt leadership. It just removes your voice from the conversation. Machiavelli saw this pattern repeatedly. The advisor who insulted the prince while leaving court, the general who publicly criticized the Senate after retirement, the merchant who sued every partner after disputes. Each felt justified in the moment. Each discovered later that the world has a long memory and many interconnections. Here's the deeper truth. Bridges aren't just about the people on the other side. They're about who you become when you cross or burn them. Every bridge preserved is a testament to your emotional control. Every bridge burned is evidence of its lack. And in the end, people trust those who can manage their emotions more than those who can't. The skilled navigator of power understands this. You can leave without burning. You can disagree without destroying. You can move on without moving backward. It requires more strength to depart gracefully than dramatically, more wisdom to preserve possibilities than to foreclose them. This doesn't mean accepting abuse or staying in toxic situations. It means being strategic about your exits. The resignation that acknowledges growth opportunities while seeking new challenges. The departure that thanks past supporters while embracing future paths. The ending that closes one chapter without burning the whole book. Consider this. Every bridge has two sides. When you burn it, you trap not just others on their side, but yourself on yours. You limit not just their access to you, but your access to everything beyond them. The world becomes smaller with every bridge destroyed until you stand on an island of your own making. The practical wisdom is simple but hard. Leave every situation better than you found it, or at least no worse. Thank people for lessons learned, even difficult ones. Acknowledge growth, even through conflict. Preserve connections, even with those you'll never see again. You never know which bridge will carry you to your future. Remember, Machiavelli wasn't advocating dishonesty or weakness. He was recognizing that power flows through networks, and networks require bridges. The momentary satisfaction of burning one is rarely worth the permanent limitation it creates. In the chess game of life, why remove your own pieces from the board? The seventh mistake, confusing fear with respect. A new CEO takes over a struggling company. Determined to establish authority quickly, he rules through intimidation. Public humiliations in meetings, sudden firings for minor mistakes, constantly reminding everyone their jobs are on the line. They need to fear me, he tells his inner circle, or they won't respect me. Within 18 months, the company collapses, not from market forces or competition, but from internal exodus. The best employees leave first. They have options. Then the good ones. Finally, only those too scared or stuck remain. He rules over a kingdom of the desperate and resentful, wondering why fear didn't create the excellence he demanded. This is perhaps Machiavelli's most misunderstood principle. Yes, he wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you must choose. But he also warned that fear must never turn to hatred, and that the ideal is to be both feared and loved. The nuance is lost on those who mistake terror for strength. Here's the psychological reality. Fear motivates in the short term, but corrodes in the long term. A person driven by fear will do the minimum to avoid punishment. They'll hide problems rather than solve them. They'll protect themselves rather than take risks. They'll comply rather than innovate. Fear creates movement, but not momentum. Watch any organization ruled by fear. The meetings where no one speaks truth. the reports that hide bad news, the culture where covering your back matters more than moving forward. Everyone's in motion, but it's defensive motion. Ducking, dodging, avoiding rather than building, creating, advancing. The manager who screams at subordinates mistakes their silence for agreement. The parent who rules through punishment mistakes their child's compliance for respect. The partner who uses emotional manipulation mistakes their lover's submission for devotion. Each confuses the absence of resistance with the presence of support. But here's what's fascinating about human nature. We don't truly follow those we fear. We evade them. We create elaborate systems to avoid their wrath while appearing compliant. We become experts at managing their emotions rather than achieving their goals. The tyrant ends up leading an organization devoted primarily to managing the tyrant. Machiavelli's deeper insight was about the nature of sustainable power. Fear is like a fire. It consumes fuel. Eventually, you run out of things to threaten, people to punish, examples to make. And when fear loses its edge, it turns to its opposite, contempt. The feared leader becomes the mocked leader, powerful only in their own. Perception, true respect operates differently. It's based on admiration, not intimidation. On inspiration, not desperation. When people respect you, they follow your vision, not just your orders. They bring their best selves, not their defensive selves. They create solutions, not just avoid problems. The tragedy is that many confuse respect's quieter power with weakness. The leader who listens seems less strong than one who lectures. The boss who admits mistakes seems less commanding than one who never does. The partner who shows vulnerability seems less powerful than one who shows only strength. But this misunderstands power's true source. The leader who can say, "I don't know," creates a culture where others can too. The boss who can say, "I was wrong," creates an environment where truth matters more than face. The partner who can say, "I'm scared," creates a relationship where both can be human. Machiavelli's ultimate wisdom wasn't choosing fear over love or vice versa. It was understanding when each is appropriate. Fear for immediate threats requiring quick action, love for long-term loyalty requiring sustained effort, and ideally a combination, being feared enough to be taken seriously, but loved enough to be followed willingly. The practical application is this: build your authority on competence, not intimidation. Set high standards through example, not threats. Create consequences for failure, but rewards for risk-taking. Make people want to meet your expectations, not just fear failing them. Remember, fear is a sprint. Respect is a marathon. Anyone can create fear with enough force. It takes true strength to create respect. And in the end, those who rule through fear die surrounded by cowards. Those who lead through respect live surrounded by champions. The central revelation, the architecture of human blindness. Now we arrive at the deeper truth that connects all these mistakes, a truth Machiavelli understood, but rarely stated directly. These aren't random errors or character flaws. They're the inevitable results of how human consciousness itself is structured. We are creatures living inside our own perceptions, mistaking our limited view for complete reality. Like fish unaware of water, we swim in cognitive biases so fundamental we can't see them. These 7 mistakes aren't failures of intelligence or morality. They're failures of perspective. Consider what unites them all: the inability to see beyond our current position, the powerful person who can't imagine becoming weak, the surrounded by weakness leader who can't see their growing isolation, the righteous crusader who can't see power's indifference to justice, each trapped in a present tense that feels eternal. This is the architecture of human blindness. We experience our current state as permanent. Today's strength feels like tomorrow's guarantee. Present advantage seems like natural law. Our position appears fixed while everything else flows. We are forever the protagonists of a story we're actually just passing through. But here's the revolutionary insight. Recognizing this blindness is itself a form of sight. Once you understand that everyone, including you, is trapped in their current perspective, you gain a meta perspective. You begin to see the theater of human interaction from the balcony, not just the stage. This is what separated Machiavelli from the princes he advised. Not cynicism, but clarity. Not manipulation, but understanding. He saw the patterns because he stood outside them, observing the eternal dance of power and blindness, ambition and illusion. The profound truth is this: wisdom isn't about avoiding these mistakes through superhuman discipline. It's about recognizing you're already making them. Right now, in ways you can't see, the executive confident in his irreplaceable value, the artist certain her talent protects her, the parent sure their child will always need them, all living inside stories that feel true until they suddenly aren't. This isn't depressing, it's liberating. Because once you accept your own inevitable blindness, you can start compensating for it. Like a sailor who knows about magnetic deviation can still navigate truly. The limitation acknowledged becomes the limitation transcended. Practical applications. The 5 compensations. Understanding these patterns of blindness, how do we navigate more wisely? Not through perfection, but through practices that compensate for our inherent limitations. First compensation, the practice of rotation. Regularly imagine your situation reversed. If you were weak, how would you view your current strength? If you were outside your organization, how would you see your position? If you were your opponent, what vulnerabilities would you exploit? This isn't paranoia. It's perspective multiplication. Like an artist walking around a sculpture, seeing from all angles what cannot be seen from one. Second compensation, the council of perspectives actively seek views that challenge your current position, not yes men who confirm your biases, but truth tellers who see what you cannot. The board member who questions your strategy, the friend who challenges your assumptions, the critic who points out your blind spots. These voices are not threats to your authority, they're extensions of your vision. Third compensation, the study of cycles. Everything human moves in cycles: power, fortune, relevance, relationships. Study these patterns in history, in your industry, in your own life. When you're strong, prepare for weakness. When you're rising, plan for falling. When you're central, anticipate periphery. This isn't pessimism. It's the wisdom of seasons, knowing that winter prepares for spring and summer anticipates fall. Fourth compensation, the investment in bridges. Treat every relationship as potentially important, every interaction as possibly significant. You cannot know which connection will matter tomorrow, which person will hold the key to your future. Build bridges everywhere, burn them nowhere. Leave every situation with doors open, not slammed shut. The universe is vast and interconnected. Why make it smaller? Fifth compensation, the cultivation of humble confidence. Be confident in your abilities, but humble about your position. Strong in your convictions, but flexible in your strategies. Certain of your worth, but uncertain of your permanence. This paradoxical stance, simultaneously assured and adaptable, protects against both weakness and arrogance. The eternal return. Wisdom as navigation. We return now to where we began, that image of someone destroying everything through a preventable mistake. But now you see it differently, not as stupidity or moral failing, but as the eternal human drama of perspective trapped within itself. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in discovering these patterns. They're as old as humanity. His genius was in mapping them, like a cartographer charting dangerous waters. Not to eliminate the dangers, that's impossible, but to navigate them more skillfully. The 7 mistakes will always exist because human consciousness will always be limited. We will always struggle to see beyond our current position, to imagine our strength as weakness, to perceive the indirect threats, to maintain perspective in the face of power or its absence. But knowing this is itself a form of transcendence. Like a dream where you know you're dreaming, awareness of the patterns gives you a degree of freedom within them. You still make mistakes, but different ones, subtler ones, perhaps recoverable ones. The ultimate lesson isn't about avoiding humiliation. It's about understanding humanity, your own and others. The blindness that makes us vulnerable also makes us human. The limitations that create our failures also create our need for each other. In the end, Machiavelli's warning becomes a strange form of compassion. See the patterns, recognize the blindness, navigate more wisely. But remember, everyone else is navigating too, just as blind, just as human, just as deserving of understanding. The palace intrigues of Renaissance Italy are gone, but the theater continues. The costumes change, the stage evolves, but the drama remains. And now you have a better map, not to win the game, but to play it with wisdom. And perhaps that's the deepest revelation of all. The point was never to avoid all mistakes. It was to make them consciously, to fail forward, to stumble with awareness rather than blindness, to be fully human while seeing clearly the pitfalls of humanity. The next time you watch someone commit one of these eternal errors, you'll recognize it. But more importantly, you'll recognize yourself. And in that recognition lies not just wisdom, but the beginning of a different kind of power. The power that comes from accepting, finally, our beautiful, terrible, inescapable humanity.